Okay. I don't know why I put this up like this, but anyway, I am here. Today, how's everyone doing? Thanks a ton for coming back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been. So, as you can see, I read Down the Drain by Julia Fox. I'm not like a major fan of her. I don't know a ton about her. I've only seen her TikToks and I've also been sent her TikToks, but like, let's say 5 max, and then I saw Uncut Gems. That is basically all I know about her, and that she dated Kanye, right? But my friend, I don't know if she really likes her that much, but likes her enough or was interested enough to see the tea that she read this book, so this is hers. Shout out to you. I have had it for like 4 months. No. I've had it since November. It's now March. I was joking about 4 months, but it's actually been 4 months. Because I brought it with me on Thanksgiving break. And I think I started. I read like 3 pages and that was it. And then Thanksgiving break. I'm not in school, but you know what I mean. Thanksgiving. Vacation, let's say. Okay. I've been rambling for a long time. Let's get into the book. So yeah. So I did not know much about Julia Fox. I don't even think my friend knows much about Julia Fox. I have to ask her, like, why she really picked this book. I'm glad she did, though, because then I got to read it for free. I'm not gonna lie, had I paid for it with my own money, I wouldn't feel that great about it. And my library doesn't have it yet. So, yeah, I'm actually not... Does it say on the books, like, when it comes out? Let's see. Because I was thinking to myself, how new is this? Okay, so it came out last year. Oh, October. Oh, so this is pretty new. Okay. Okay. I actually fully just... Maybe I did read this, but I don't think I read these little, like, dedications that were at the front. But I also started the book, like, in November and then like put it down for ages, so maybe I didn't, I just forgot. Identities have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. Okay, I like that. The dedication, she had 3 friends that passed away, so she dedicated it to them, and I'm glad I'm reading this now because it's way more meaningful, because I wouldn't have known who these people were, or I guess I would have known when I was reading about them that they passed. That's interesting. But I didn't read in loving memory, the in memoriam at the front, so I didn't realize that these individuals were gonna pass. Okay, so this is about Julia Fox. Google her if you don't know who she is. I don't know a ton about her. Halfway through the book, I was just curious about, I can't even remember, like, you know what it was? Because she keeps talking about weight loss and weight gain throughout this book, so I did look her up to be like, okay, I know right now she's definitely more of a model-esque figure, so I was thinking to myself, I remember her vaguely in Uncut Gems because I saw it like when it came out, and that was it. I am a big movie rewatcher, and that was a really good movie, so it would be the type that I would rewatch, but I was so viscerally stressed that entire movie because I felt like, as an adult now who's like in control of her life, like I feel like I get stressed out when I watch things where people are just consistently making poor decisions back to back to back. It's like they have a chance to dig themselves out of a hole and they don't. And it's just like, this is not what I want out of my entertainment because I'm just so stressed. You know what I mean? When I watch those things. And partially maybe because it's like, you know, holding up a mirror. But anyway, so I had a vague memory of how she looked in Uncut Gems, so I ended up Googling her at the halfway point just to see, like, okay, you know, at a heavier weight, at a lighter weight, like, what does she actually look like? Because she sometimes describes it, and I'm just like, okay, like, I want to be able to visualize it accurately, because, like, I feel like when I read fiction, it's like, it's whatever you want it to be in your mind, but, like, in real life, we have the reference, right? So I did look her up. I did then see that she had been married and she had a kid. I didn't realize that. And then I also just went on her Instagram. I've already, you know, we see like clippings and things of her in the media. I've always liked her style, but like when I looked into her Instagram, I'm like, her style is fire. And I think like, I'm sure, you know, she has support, she has stylists, she has artistic directors, but like whether it's I don't know how much of it is her vision, how much of it is the people she chooses to work with, but just 10 out of 10. Like, really enjoy her style. Like, obviously, maybe not obviously, but like, it's not something that I would ever, it's not practical. It's not something I would ever see myself wearing, but it's just fun to see. Excuse me. I like to see when people just like do some fun things, get creative, get outside the box when it comes to fashion, and keep evolving. You don't just like, oh, well, I'm big and I'm known for these things, and you kind of just keep doing the same thing. It's like, no, you keep doing different stuff. So like, I really enjoy her style. In this book, she talks a little bit like about her like modeling and styling and stuff like that. So I think it's cool because I do enjoy it. But anyway, what are my thoughts on this book? I did ask Google whether she had a ghostwriter. She herself says that she didn't have a ghostwriter. I remember seeing that, but then multiple people in my life who've actually also read this book were like, no, there's definitely a ghostwriter. If there is a ghostwriter, I don't want to be me, okay? But like, if there is a ghostwriter, like, I'm concerned. Like, it better be the ghostwriter's first book. You feel me? I think this is a well-written book. If Julia wrote it, I'm impressed. If a ghostwriter wrote it, work on your craft or consider a different profession. It's not horrible, but I think if your job is to like write about someone's life and capture their voice, I think you need to work on your craft. Because one thing I'll say about this book is I feel like the tone is inconsistent. And a bunch of these things that I'm going to mention, if you want to look at it at a more artistic level, you can give grace, right? I think the tone is inconsistent, but you could argue that because there's a lot of substance use, there's a lot of mental health situations in this book, that you could argue that like the different tones are reflective of her different like states of mind and all this kind of stuff. So you could argue that it's an artistic choice. Same thing with the pacing. I think that pacing is not good. I think it spends 75% of this book on like her early life and then really rushes through the stuff that people would actually be reading this book to learn about. And so, but you could argue that when you're young, everything is a big deal and these things are larger than life in her mind. Whereas when you're an adult, everything is just a mile a minute. So you could argue that it's a stylistic choice. If that's what she's trying to do, that's cool. But I still don't like it because I think it just would have been better if those elements were tweaked. Like, even if you were trying to do something with it, it's like, it also could just be interpreted as like, this is your first book and you gotta work on these things, you know? And I also think sometimes when I read books and I'm just like, I think it's totally fine if this were like some level of a draft, but like an editor needed to be a little bit more savage, you know? I think sometimes that happens. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but sometimes I read books and I'm like, I feel like your editor wasn't savage enough. But anyway, I think that her early life should have been half of the book, and the other half should have been devoted to the stuff that we want to know about. Uncut Gems, relationship with, she calls him the artist in this book. I think everyone is gonna assume it's Kanye. That relationship, her marriage, having a kid, Uncut Gems, that whole chapter of her life, Uncut Gems onward, right? That's really what people would want to hear about. So I think that should have been the second half. And then also should have included, she speaks like at the very end about all these different like ways in which she was objectified, and then how now objectified and abused and things like that, and how now that she's lost weight, she's no longer the object of people's desire, or particularly men's desire, and how that's been freeing. I feel like, go into that more. I kind of disagree because I'm like, models still get objectified. They're like very skinny. So like, I don't necessarily agree that just because you lost the weight, you're no longer the object of people's desire, but maybe you just notice it less, or maybe it's a different caliber, or maybe like, yeah, like maybe it takes a different form. It's not as overt and aggressive, but I think like as a woman, as an attractive woman, no matter how hard she tries to like look a different way. She's still an attractive woman, let's be real. And so, like, I don't know that I agree with that statement just because you lost the weight. People are not, banging down your door. It's like, is that really it? I don't know. But I would have liked just to go into it more, right? I called BS on it a little bit, but discuss, right? I just wanted more of that. And obviously tread lightly, like, take a class on, like, intersectional feminism. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it could have been very easy for her to, like, get mired if she were to go too much into it from, like, a macro society with a capital S, like, type thing. It could have gotten her into hot water, and that's probably why that was so brief. However, I just feel like, why mention it then? If you're gonna mention it, let's talk. It doesn't have to be a thesis, doesn't have to be a dissertation, but, like, let's talk about it a little bit more. Let's explore more. And I think that's my entire thesis of, like, what I didn't enjoy that much about this book is that it lacks reflection. It's kind of like that Lady Gaga meme where it's like, club, bar, another club. And it makes sense because, like, a lot of people, again, are doing, herself and a lot of people that she mentions in this book they're on substances. And so, like, it is a lot of, like, let the good times roll, party, met this person, this happened, and then there'll be, like, some type of, like, really intense event, and that'll be given, like, a little bit of time, and then it's back to the party, Like, speaking about her granddad passing, speaking about being drugged and assaulted, like, certain things, like, they're just not given a ton of weight, but it's just all in this, like, party cycle, and it makes sense, like, when you are on substances, when you are dealing with mental health and you are using those things to, like, numb and push down, like, I get it, why it's written that way, but I just wish at some point there was more reflection. Like, I think in the 11th hour she does, like, a little bit of reflecting, and it just barely even scratches the surface, and the stuff that people really want to know about, which is, like, her being in Hollywood, those connections, she spends very little time on it. I'd say the last 3 chapters is Uncut Gems and onward. The stuff that you really want to hear about is the last 3 chapters of the book. The rest of it is her young life and her life before Uncut Gems. And I don't even believe she mentions how she meets the director. I think she knows the screenwriter. She doesn't mention how she meets him. Maybe she does, and I just, like, missed it. But, like, from my recollection and from my reading, she doesn't mention how she meets this guy. She just knows him, and he calls her up, and he's like, hey, I think you're great for this role. Now, she goes into the process, and not that just that simple. Obviously, she still has to audition like everyone else, but I just wish, like, those things were made more clear. She talks a little bit about how she has it harder than, like, Nepo babies, and, like, sure, she definitely does, for a myriad of reasons, a lot of it being her reputation. But I think, like, I don't know, like, that was a little bit tone deaf for me as, like, gorgeous, conventionally attractive Italian, aka exotic men to be like, I have it so much harder than these Nepo babies. It's like, and you know who else? What other major groups of people have it way harder than you? Like, I'm not saying you can't have your moments of, like, this is hard, because when I read this book, she's been through a lot. But just, like, the complaint about the industry was interesting to me, because I'm just like, you still have it easier than a lot of people. Like, I just don't know that that's the thing to complain about. You want to complain about other things? Please do. Please do. But not that. I did feel a little bit weird about that. And I did feel a little bit weird about the way that she ended the book, which is kind of like, I was bullied and I was seen as weird and look at me now. It's just like, we're dunking on people in the end. Like, I don't know. I just feel like there could have been a more wholesome note to end on, especially with all that she puts in this book. I will say this, right? First novel, if it's written by Julia, this is a very well written book. I absolutely cried once or twice. I am a crier though, and she's been through a lot. She's been through so much, and to be raw and to be honest about those kinds of things is very hard. And I respect the hell out of what she was able to do in terms of pouring her heart and her life into these pages. These are very intimate and very hard things to write about. So I just want to underscore that. I think it was well written. I think I enjoyed it. I think I read it faster than I thought I was going to be able to get through it. And so, like, especially for someone who, like, I wasn't really invested in her, like, much or even at all. I think I might have had a slightly negative view. Now, I'm kind of invested in her, for sure. So, I think she did a really good job. Now, it was hard to read at certain points because I was just like seeing her going through the same cycles again and again and again. And I'm like, when are you gonna get it right? And because she's still like young, in my opinion, I think like she's not at a place where she's able to say like, and for now the last 10 years I've been in a healthy relationship or whatever. You know what I mean? She's not able to like look back in this way. So I was nervous. I was definitely nervous that we were gonna get to the end of the book and she would have learned nothing and changed nothing. So after like we get to like the 75% mark, she's still on the same roller coaster she was in the beginning at like 14. I'm like, oh gosh, like, is she gonna like, you know, get the reins? Like, I don't want us to end on the note of like, and life still sucks. You know? But anyway, I think one of the shining achievements of this book, other than being deeply transparent, is that she writes about her friendships in a very emotional and evocative way. And I was reading it, and these one of the moments where I felt like crying, or maybe, you know, shed a little tear or two, is the friendships. And I feel like in the way she writes about them, just beautiful. I feel like we see her friends through her intensely loving eyes. And I think that was really very enjoyable to read. And I think it's in contrast to other points in the book where she's recounting, in particular, the traumatic events, but some other events that are just like facts. Like, I don't know if anyone ever did a unit in school where you were like doing journalism, and like the way that we were taught in school when you're writing something that's like from a journalistic perspective in that tone, only facts, just the facts, man. You know what I mean? And so like we would go over actual articles, we'd go over each other's articles and be like, is this a fact? Is this an opinion? Are we editorializing here? You know what I mean? And so I feel like certain points of this book were just like, at this time we went here, at that time we went there, this happened, and there's like no reflection. It's not very artful, even in the tone of where we're just the way that she's describing things that went on. So I think that's where I'm just like, sometimes the tone is deeply artistic, emotional, evocative, almost like poetry, like, you know, oh my gosh, yeah, like prose poetry or whatever. And then other times it's just like you're reading a news article, you know? And so that's where I feel like the tone is inconsistent, but when she writes about friendships, I think is where she shines. And she's also lost multiple friends. She has multiple friends pass away that she writes about. I think one of the friends, I don't even believe she talked about her earlier on in the book, and then she just says that she passed. So I feel like I wish we would have gotten more time with some of the friends who passed. One of the friends who passes, who's named Gianna in the book, one of the friends who passes, she spends a lot of time on writing about this friend, and it's very beautiful, and so it really hits home when you learn that friend passes. A lot of these people struggle with addiction, so it's not necessarily surprising when they pass, but it's just very upsetting. Two of the friends actually who pass, we spend a lot of time with them. One of those friends who passes, I don't believe we even hear about them earlier on in the book. We just hear that they pass, and so like stuff like that is not impactful. Whereas like she has one friend who is a great friend in Italy, but then when she moves to the States is like awful and a menace. Oh, we should have spent less time on that friend who sucks and more time on the friend who passes. You know what I mean? So like sometimes the pacing, the amount of time spent with a certain character just for them to be dropped and never spoken about again, or the amount of time we spend in her young years versus the stuff that you know is the meat and potatoes that everyone wants to know about. Sometimes those stylistic choices don't make the most sense to me, but at the end of the day, it's it's her baby, it's her masterpiece, and I absolutely do think this is something to be proud of. If she wrote this all herself, incredible. I would argue that there's a chance that she used a ghostwriter, maybe even collaboration, just because the tone is not always as consistent. But either way, like, I think this is a really good, like, debut book. And if she writes fiction, if she writes anything else, I will read it, like, genuinely. I appreciated her transparency. I appreciated the way she wrote about friendship. I think she really, like, she was a little bit trifling with the pacing, because it's like, you know what people are here to, like, actually hear about. And at the end of the day, it's her book and she has the floor, and she knows she had the power that people were going to read it to hear tea. Or to see tea. So she did with her time what she will, and, like, that's her right and her power as an artist, and good for her. But I also think, like, come on, give the people what they want, you know? Another note that I didn't like is, like, when she decides to keep her kid, she mentions having had abortions in the past. Makes sense, because she was using a lot of substances and wasn't always in her right mind. So, like, makes sense. But I just, like, why is that the first time we're hearing about it? That could have been a very evocative thing. Now, again, maybe it's just because, and maybe this is going back to the tone issue, is like, maybe because these things are so traumatic, she either chooses to not write about them or write about them in a very matter-of-fact way. But I think, like, that's the level. I think if you're not ready to reflect on it and, like, really give the things that the weight that they deserve, like, to me, right, if you're telling your life story, hit the impactful points. And having to have, you know, multiple, like, terminations of pregnancy and weighing them up against finally deciding to have a kid, that's a very impactful moment. The 11th time that you went to this club in Chelsea is not impactful, in my opinion, right? So, like, that's where I'm just like, certain choices, I didn't get it, but I can say that maybe it was from an emotional and protective point where you're just like, these people could have these portions of me, but not this. And I think that's okay, but I think for me, because of certain other issues with the book, I just think that it's because she probably hasn't processed certain things, and it's just like, wait until you've processed them so that you can write about them and just do your story justice. Because right now the story seems uneven, and it seems a lot more heavily towards partying. She does hit on real stuff, but, like, I just felt like partying and, like, that whole thing just took up more space than, like, her getting sober or, like, other impactful and important things that did happen in her life. Like, she talks about the art show. I wish she would have gone into the process of that art show way more than she went into other details. Even, like, she gets diagnosed with bipolar 1, and then she mentions that, earlier on when she was, like, institutionalized in a mental health hospital, like, we are there, like, she writes about that time, but she never writes about her diagnosis at that time. But then later, when she gets diagnosed with something else, then she mentions the previous diagnosis. I'm like, was that original diagnosis a misdiagnosis, or are they both layered on top of each other? Like, just lack of clarity and continuity in the way that things are written. That, you know, could be an artistic choice, but I just didn't love it. I think that's it. I really actually covered everything. Yeah, I think if you like her at all, like, this is not a bad memoir. I really enjoy memoirs, though, and I will say this, like, there's just so many really good ones. So, like, I can't even say, like, I recommend it, just because I think there's so many other memoirs that, like, I want to get to, that I've read already, that I would reread because they were so good, that, like, I don't know that this would make the cut. But I think, like, I went in with, like, I went in very neutral, and I was pleasantly surprised, and it was enjoyable. And I like her more. But this is a really solid book, and this is a really solid first book, so, like, I will absolutely read anything she puts out next. So I think that, to me, is, like, if I'm gonna read other stuff and I'll look out and be excited to read other stuff that you've written, you've impressed me, you've got me. And at the end of the day, yeah, like, that's money. So, like, that's really all all you want. As someone who's like, I will be a returning customer. Like, it does not have to be Shakespeare. But if you would read something else they would write, or you would read what they've written already again, that's always just like a glowing recommendation, regardless of whatever, rating system. So yeah. So I'm not gonna say I recommend it, but I think if you're interested in learning about her, definitely, because it's very transparent and you'll learn a lot. And this was hard. This was definitely hard to like share what the kinds of things that she shares about, and I really just like genuinely wish the best for her son, the people in her life. Like, I just really want healing and strength and prosperity. So, I mean, again, if she's like canceled on social media, if there's anything that's going on, I literally don't know much about her. So like, I'm saying that not knowing the totality of her person. So bear that in mind. Don't be like, oh, like, you support this person, she did this or she did that. I don't know. And maybe I'll Google her before I post this, just to like make sure she's not canceled or something. But yeah, this was not bad. I'm glad I read it. I think that's it. What else would I say? Love to talk about TV, love to talk about reality TV, love to talk about books. So I'm so excited to get on here and like do this. Even if no one watches it, it's just fun for me. Cause like, I will talk to my mom at length about stuff that she doesn't even know about. Like, I'll talk to I chat. When I'm into stuff, I can chat. So even if I'm just yelling into the void on the internet and like one or two people watch this, it's just fun. So I'm excited. Thanks for being here if you're here and if you actually stayed this long. But yeah. See you on the flip side.